To pay for my daughter's surgery, I kidnapped the Ice Queen CEO, Catherine Thorne. With a trembling hand, I dialed her father's number. Lowering my voice, I said, "I have your daughter. Get $5 million ready." The line went silent for 3 seconds, then a cold laugh echoed back. 5 million? Is that all she's worth? Just get rid of her. It'll save me the trouble. Beep, beep, beep. I stared at the disconnected call on my cheap burner phone, then looked at the woman trussed up like a Thanksgiving turkey in the chair next to me. She raised an eyebrow, her tone unnervingly calm. "You heard him. My father told you to get lost." I was floored. This wasn't how the script was supposed to go. Just then, my daughter ran over, clutching her pillow. In her sweet, high-pitched voice, she asked, "Daddy, is the pretty lady here for a play date?" My head felt like it had been hit with a sledgehammer, a dull ringing in my ears. 5 million. Get rid of her. The words ricocheted around my skull, making my vision swim. I gripped the old burner phone, the veins on the back of my hand popping out. How could this happen? In the movies, they always cry and beg the kidnapper not to hurt the hostage, promising to pay any amount. "You heard him. My father told you to get lost." Catherine Thorne's voice was flat, devoid of any emotion, but each word slapped me across the face. I looked up at her. I had tied her securely with a hemp rope to the only wooden chair in the yard of my secluded cabin. Her expensive-looking business suit was smudged with dust, and her hair was a mess. But her face was still flawlessly striking, her eyes filled with an undisguised mockery. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. It was over. That was the only thought in my head, my one and only hope, extinguished by a single sentence from her father. Mia's surgery, $500,000, was a mountain pressing down on my chest. Now that mountain was collapsing, about to bear me alive. "Daddy, is the pretty lady here for a play date?" My daughter Mia's voice pulled me back from the brink of despair. She was hugging a faded pillow, her big eyes blinking as she looked at Catherine, full of curiosity. My heart seized. I rushed over, trying to lead her back inside the cabin. "Mia, go back inside. Daddy's busy." "Miss, what game are you playing?" "Please tag." Mia ignored me, circling Catherine and poking the ropes on her leg with a small finger. Catherine's body tensed slightly. I saw her lower her gaze to my daughter's pale but curious little face. "I advise you to let me go now and turn yourself in," she said, her voice still ice-cold. "You might get off with attempted kidnapping." I let out a bitter laugh. Turn myself in? If I did that, what would happen to Mia's condition? The doctor said if she didn't have the surgery soon, she would. I couldn't let myself think about it. I shoved the phone into my pocket, crouched down, and forced a smile. "Mia, sweetie, the lady is tired and needs to rest. Let's not bother her." "Oh," Mia nodded, not quite understanding. Catherine looked at me and suddenly spoke again. "Your choice of location is terrible. This rundown cabin is drafty, and a dog barking at the end of the road could be heard by the entire town." I froze. "Your kidnapping technique is also unprofessional. These knots are a mess. I could work my way out of them with a little effort." She wiggled her wrists, and the rope did indeed loosen a bit. My face flushed with heat as I scrambled to tighten it. "And the ransom amount is just pathetic. 5 million? I don't know if you're insulting my net worth or overestimating my value to him." Her words were like knives, stabbing me one by one. "But most importantly," she paused, looking at my beet-red face, "you didn't even do a basic background check. You called the wrong person to pay." I was rendered speechless by her string of professional critiques, my face burning. A kidnapper being dressed down by his own hostage. If word got out, I'd be a laughingstock. Just then, cough, cough, cough. Mia suddenly began to cough violently, her small body curling into a ball, her face pale. My heart clenched. Kidnapping, ransom, it all vanished from my mind. I scooped her up in a panic. "Mia, what's wrong? Are you feeling sick again?" I held my daughter, completely helpless. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Catherine Thorne's expression change. The cold mockery vanished, replaced by a complex emotion I couldn't decipher. The next day, the sun came up. I hadn't slept a wink. The hostage in my yard had become a ticking time bomb. Let her go. How would I pay for Mia's treatment? Don't let her go? Her own father told me to get rid of her. Who else could I demand a ransom from? With dark circles under my eyes, I carried a bowl of watery soup and a piece of dry toast over to Catherine. Eat, I said, my voice hoarse, placing the bowl on the stone table beside her. She glanced at the soup, her brow furrowing in disgust. This is what you feed a hostage worth billions. You're lucky to be getting anything, I snapped back. She didn't say anything else, just stared silently at the bowl. I paced around the yard, my mind a tangled mess of anxiety. Get the salt and pepper from your pathetic excuse for a kitchen, she said suddenly. I looked at her, confused. Are you trying to make me die of blandness? She rolled her eyes. It finally clicked. I trudged into the kitchen, got the shakers, sprinkled some into the soup, and handed it to her. She took a sip, and her expression was like she had just drunk poison. I couldn't be bothered with her. I squatted on the doorstep, gnawing on my own piece of toast. Go move that cabinet over there. Block the window. It increases security, she commanded again. I didn't move. Do you want the neighbors to spot me and have the cops swarm this place? I gritted my teeth and begrudgingly went to move the cabinet. It was heavy as lead, and I was sweating buckets by the time I was done. And these knots are a joke. You can't even tie a proper slip knot. She looked disdainfully at the ropes I had retied yesterday. Come here. I'll teach you. Pay attention. You might need it someday. I felt my dignity being systematically crushed. Mia must have woken up at some point. She came running out, hugging her worn-out Captain America action figure. Good morning, Aunt Cat. She had already come up with a nickname for Catherine yesterday. As Catherine looked at Mia, the ice on her face seemed to melt just a little. Morning, she replied, a single word. Mia proudly spread her picture book open in front of Catherine. Aunt Cat, I'll read you a story. This is Iron Man, and this is Thor, and they fight bad guys to protect the Earth. Catherine had clearly never dealt with children before. An awkwardness radiated from her entire body. But Mia was a natural-born extrovert and paid no mind to her coldness, chattering away nonstop. Watching them, I felt a swirl of complicated emotions. A kidnapper, a hostage, and a sick little girl. What kind of messed-up situation was this? At noon, I was about to make lunch, staring helplessly at the stove. All I knew how to make was instant noodles and scrambled eggs. You look useless. Let me, Catherine said, looking at me with pure disdain. I skeptically untied her hands, leaving her feet bound. She flexed her wrists and strode into my greasy kitchen like a queen inspecting the slums. Then, a second later, a scream. I burst into the kitchen to see flames leaping from the pan, thick smoke billowing everywhere. Catherine stood there holding a spatula, a look of sheer panic on her face, her pristine cheeks now smudged with soot. I frantically scooped water and doused the flames, finally putting the fire out. The kitchen was a complete disaster. Esther there. She stared back at me, her face a mask of unprecedented embarrassment. A strategic miscalculation, she said, refusing to admit defeat. Daddy and Aunt Cat are playing a fire-breathing dragon game. Mia clapped from the doorway, giggling with delight. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That evening, I tied her back to the chair, but Mia pulled up a small stool and sat beside her, pestering Catherine to teach her how to read. To my surprise, Catherine actually looked at Mia's tattered old storybook and patiently taught her, word by word. This word is sky. This one is earth. Her voice was no longer so cold, carrying a patience that even she didn't seem to notice. I leaned against the doorframe, watching the warm, yellow light spill from the cabin. Under the light, the large and small figures huddled together, creating a scene so warm it felt unreal. This kidnapping had gone off the rails from the very beginning, and now it was careening in a direction I could have never predicted. What was I going to do? This woman, this hostage. Who was she, really? 3 in the middle of the night. A choked coughing fit woke me up. It wasn't Mia's usual cough. This was sharp and rapid, laced with painful groans. I shot out of bed and ran into Mia's room. In the moonlight, I saw my daughter's small body curled up on the bed, her face turning a terrifying shade of reddish purple, her lips white. She was gasping for air, but didn't seem to be able to draw a single breath. Mia. I was scared out of my wits. I rushed over and picked her up. Her body was burning up, yet she was trembling. Daddy, it hurts. My chest hurts. She squeezed the words out through her clenched teeth, her little hands clutching the front of her pajamas. My mind went completely blank. It was happening. The doctor's words exploded in my ears. Her condition could lead to an acute episode at any time. It would be extremely dangerous. Now, a sharp voice cut through the night from the yard. It was Catherine. Her voice shattered my panic like a needle popping a balloon. Don't panic. Listen to me. I ran out of the room, clutching my daughter. Catherine, still tied to the chair, was staring intently at Mia in my arms. Her face was grim in the moonlight. Quick, untie me, she commanded. I hesitated for a split second. She was my hostage. Do you want to watch her die? She roared, her voice trembling slightly. I looked at my daughter's weakening breaths and threw all caution to the wind. I fumbled for my pocket knife and sliced through the ropes on her hands and feet. The moment the ropes fell, she was on her feet. Lay her flat on the bed. No, prop her up. Use pillows to elevate her upper body. Her tone was calm and professional, carrying an authority that was impossible to question. I moved like a puppet, following her every command. She quickly unbuttoned the collar of Mia's pajamas, felt her forehead, and listened to her heartbeat. Where's her emergency medication? Get it now. The medicine. It's in the cabinet. I finally remembered the rescue pills the doctor prescribed. I frantically rummaged through the cabinet, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't even twist the cap off the bottle. Catherine snatched the bottle from me, expertly popping it open and shaking out a pill. Under her tongue. Now, my hands trembled as I placed the tiny pill in my daughter's mouth. Give her space. Let her breathe. Get a bowl of warm water and a towel. Wipe her forehead and palms. She issued orders methodically while gently and rhythmically rubbing Mia's chest. She whispered soothingly to the terrified little girl. It's okay, Mia. Breathe with me. In and out. That's right. You're doing great. Her voice was soft and gentle, a world away from the Ice Queen CEO I thought I knew. Under her guidance, after about 15 minutes, Mia's breathing slowly stabilized. The color returned to her face, and she fell into a deep sleep in my arms. All the strength drained from my body. I slumped to the floor, only then realizing I was drenched in sweat, my shirt stuck to my back. I looked at Catherine. She was watching Mia intently, and only after confirming she was okay did she let out a sigh of relief. She stood up, a hint of exhaustion on her face. I minored in emergency medical services in college. She explained quietly, as if she knew what I was thinking. She paused, her gaze drifting to the dark night sky outside the window, her voice dropping. My mother had a heart condition, too. A flicker of loneliness and sorrow I had never seen before crossed her face. In that moment, looking at her, I felt something other than guilt for the first time. It was gratitude and a sliver of admiration. The cabin was silent, save for the steady sound of Mia's and my own breathing. She walked silently back to the chair and sat down, then held out her hands to me. All right, tie me up again. I stared at her, at the white wrists still bearing the red marks from the ropes. I picked up the rope from the floor, but it felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. This person had just saved my daughter's life, and now I was supposed to tie her up again. What in God's name was I doing? For as dawn broke, Catherine suddenly spoke. My father won't call the police. I had just finished tucking Mia in. My hand froze. Why not? Calling the cops means the kidnapping gets out. The CEO of a publicly traded company gets kidnapped. The stock would plummet. He can't afford that kind of public humiliation. Her words were cold, as if she were analyzing a business deal that had nothing to do with her. Then he'll send people to clean up the scene, she said, looking straight at me. That includes you, and it includes me, the stain on his reputation. A chill ran down my spine. Clean up. Stain. The words sounded terrifyingly calm coming from her. Just then, the dogs down the road started barking furiously, the sound sharp and jarring in the quiet morning. My heart dropped. I rushed to the window, pulling back a corner of the curtain to peer outside. An unmarked black van was lurching down the dirt road toward the cabin. This area was remote. We rarely saw outside vehicles. They're here. Catherine's voice came from behind me. My palms started sweating. My mind was a chaotic mess. Should I run? But where could I go? Don't panic, she said, her voice eerily calm. From the looks of it, they're even more amateur than you are. The van stopped at the edge of the property. A few men in black t-shirts got out. They looked like cheap thugs, glancing around nervously. Take Mia. Follow me. We'll hide in the woods behind the cabin, she decided instantly. You know the terrain here. We can lose them. I didn't have time to think. I scooped up a sleeping Mia and followed Catherine out the back door. We had just ducked into the tree line when we heard the cabin's front door being kicked in with a loud bang. Where are they? Boss, no one's here. Search. Search every damn inch. We hid behind a large boulder, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. Mia stirred in my arms, and I quickly covered her mouth. A few moments later, one of the thugs' phones rang. He must have thought they were alone, because he spoke loudly. Yeah, Mr. Thorne. We're at the location, but they're gone. Don't you worry, though. We'll find it. Right. The lady was probably taken, but the scene is a little weird. There are kids' toys in the house, half-eaten food on the table. It's rough, but it looks like she was having a pretty okay time here. I couldn't hear the voice on the other end, but I could imagine Arthur Thorne's rage. The thug quickly changed his tune. Yes, sir. We're on it. Once we find her, we'll bring her back to you, just like you said. And the kidnapper. We'll take care of him. Clean and quiet, guaranteed. Take care of him. Those words stabbed into my ears like icicles. My blood ran cold. These people weren't here to rescue her. They were here to kill me. And maybe even Catherine. I didn't dare think about it. I turned to look at Catherine. Her face was blank, as if she had expected this all along. She took my phone from my pocket, her fingers flying across the screen. I had no idea what she was doing. A few minutes later, a faint static came from my phone's speaker, followed by the clear voice of the lead thug. Damn it, the boss is getting impatient. Split up. We need to find them before dark. The woods can't be that big. They couldn't have gone far. She had hacked their phone. I stared at her in shock. She turned off the eavesdropping feature and handed the phone back to me, her eyes as sharp as a hawk's. We're in the same boat now. If we want to live, we have to work together. Night fell, and the woods filled with the rustling sounds of the thugs searching. Beams from their flashlights cut through the trees like the eyes of predators hunting their prey. They pushed us further and further back, until we were cornered in an abandoned quarry. Behind us was a cliff with a sheer 100-foot drop. In front of us were the closing footsteps and angry shouts. We were trapped. Mia was terrified, trembling in my arms. I held her close, my heart filled with despair. Catherine looked at me, her face eerily calm in the pale moonlight. I have a plan, but it's going to require you to take a risk. She locked eyes with me and asked, one word at a time, Are you in? What's the plan? I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. A diversion, she said succinctly. Listen, old man Hemlock down the road has a flock of geese. I need you to lead them out onto the path those guys took up the mountain. Geese. I was baffled. We were in a life-or-death situation, and she wanted me to go get geese? When you brought me into town, I noticed those geese are the local bullies. They're meaner than any dog. If you piss them off, they'll chase someone clear across the county, she explained. I was stunned. This woman's powers of observation were terrifying. How did she know our town better than I did in just a short time? I didn't want to listen to her, but I had no other choice. I handed Mia to Catherine. Take care of her. She nodded, pulling the frightened little girl into her arms and whispering reassurances. I crouched low, using the darkness and my knowledge of the terrain to slip silently back down the mountain. Old man Hemlock's goose pen was near the main road. I pried open the gate, scooped up a handful of dirt, and hurled it at the big alpha gander. Honk! The gander was enraged. It stretched its long neck and charged at me, its army of female and young geese right behind it. I turned and ran for my life, leading the feathered battalion straight toward the path the thugs were on. Behind me was a cacophony of honking, flapping wings, and my own ragged breathing. Sure enough, the thugs were trudging up the path, flashlights waving, cursing under their breath. They ran right into me. Before they could react, they were surrounded by my goose army. What the hell? Where did all these geese come from? Get off. Stop pecking me. Screams and honks echoed through the valley. The scene was utterly ridiculous. I took advantage of the chaos, diving into the bushes and circling back to the quarry. Nice work. Catherine nodded at me, then pointed to another area. Now, over there. See that slope? I need you to push those barrels of pig feed down it. I then noticed a few old, rusty metal barrels piled at the edge of the quarry, filled with what I assumed was forgotten pig feed, reeking of sour mash. I immediately understood her plan. I scrambled up the slope and, with all my strength, pushed the heavy barrels over the edge one by one. Crash! Rumble! The barrels, along with loose rocks, tumbled down the slope like an avalanche, landing right on top of the thugs who were still being terrorized by the geese. Ow! My leg! What is that? It stinks. Another round of agonized howls filled the air. Catherine and I hid behind a rock, watching the chaos unfold. For the first time, a small smile graced her perpetually icy face. It was faint and fleeting, but it was like a ray of light that instantly brightened my world. I looked at her profile, and my heart skipped a beat. Daddy, are they putting on a play? This is so much fun. Mia, now feeling safe in Catherine's arms, was no longer scared and was quietly cheering for the thugs. I managed a weak smile. That kid was something else. I thought we were in the clear, but the leader of the thugs was a nasty piece of work. Damn it. If you can't find them, light a fire. Burn the whole damn mountain down. Let's see them hide then, his furious shout carried on the wind. Catherine's face and mind changed at the same time. They were going to set the woods on fire. What had been a game of cat and mouse had just turned deadly. Flames soon erupted at the base of the mountain and, fanned by the wind, spread rapidly in our direction. Thick smoke billowed up, stinging our eyes. Our laughter died, swallowed by the inferno. The fire spread faster than we could have imagined. The dry brush and trees were perfect kindling, the crackling of the flames sounding like the footsteps of death. A wall of heat rolled toward us, the air thick with acrid smoke. Cough, cough. Daddy, I'm scared. Tears streamed down Mia's face from the smoke, her little body trembling in my arms. I held her tightly, my heart flooded with despair and regret. I should never have kidnapped Catherine Thorne. I shouldn't have dragged everyone into this nightmare. I thought we were going to die. I turned to look at Catherine. She was coughing from the smoke, too, but her eyes were still defiant. I'm sorry. I choked out, my voice hoarse. I'm so sorry I dragged you into this. In the face of death, all pretenses and schemes felt meaningless. For the first time, I told her the absolute truth. My daughter, she has a congenital heart defect. The doctor said the surgery would cost $500,000. I borrowed from every friend and relative I have. I sold everything I owned, and I still only had less than $50,000. I worked construction, 16 hours a day, but the money I made was just a drop in the bucket. I was desperate. I saw a story about you in the news, and I did something stupid. My voice broke, and tears streamed down my face. I'm not a bad person, Miss Thorne. I'm really not a bad person. I'm just a father trying to save his daughter. After I finished, I felt completely drained, slumping against the rock wall. Catherine watched me silently, the firelight dancing across her face. In her eyes, usually so cold, I saw a storm of complex emotions. She didn't speak. Instead, she took off her expensive blazer, found a bottle of water we had stashed, and without hesitation, poured the water onto the jacket, soaking it. Then, she pressed the wet cloth over Mia's nose and mouth. You're an idiot, she finally said, her voice raspy. But you're not a bad man. In the firelight, she was no longer the high and mighty CEO. Her eyes held understanding, sympathy, and even a hint of pity. She took a deep breath, as if making a monumental decision. Don't give up. She looked at me and said, the most important thing my father ever taught me was to never, ever give up. Her eyes shone with an extraordinary light in the glow of the fire. She grabbed my arm and pointed to a section of the cliff face behind us, where the rock was indented and damp from water erosion. There, water has been seeping out of this spot for years. The rock behind it might be hollow, or there might be a fissure leading somewhere else. We might have a way out. Without another word, she pulled me along, grabbing a loose rock and starting to hammer against the cliff face. Shaken back to my senses, I held Mia in one arm and joined her, searching for our escape. Her hands were cut by the sharp rocks, blood dripping from her fingers, but she didn't seem to feel the pain. Thump, thump, thump. As we struck the rock, we heard a faint, hollow echo from within. There was hope. She grabbed my hand, dirty, bloody, but incredibly strong. This way. Follow me. We're going to get out of here. In the smoke and flames, Her hand became my only guide. 7, we finally squeezed through a narrow fissure in the rock. The exit opened into a small, hidden valley on the other side of the mountain. The three of us were covered in soot and grime, completely exhausted, but we were alive. Mia, traumatized by the ordeal, had fallen asleep in my arms. Catherine and I collapsed on the ground, gasping for air. A post-survival silence hung between us. After a long while, she held out her hand. "Give me my phone." Her voice was quiet but resolute. Without hesitation, I took the smartphone I had been holding for her from my pocket and handed it over. She took it and turned it on. There was only 1 bar of signal, but it was enough. She dialed her father, Arthur Thorne, and put the call on speaker. The phone rang for a long time before he picked up, his voice exploding with fury. "You have a nerve to call me? Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused? How much the company's stock has dropped because of you?" Not a single word of concern, not one question about her safety. Just accusations and profit margins. My blood ran cold. But Catherine just let out a chilling laugh, colder than her father's rage. "Trouble? Is me being nearly burned alive by the thugs you sent to trouble? Or is it that this interfered with you closing that multi-billion-dollar deal?" The other end of the line went silent. "Arthur, I used to think you just didn't love me. Now I understand. In your eyes, I'm not even your daughter. I'm just a tool to secure deals and decorate your public image. And now that this tool has a minor defect that might affect your bottom line, you decided to clean up the tool along with the defect. Is that right?" Every word was a dagger, aimed with precision. You ungrateful brat. What nonsense are you spouting?" Arthur Thorne sputtered, enraged. "You know perfectly well if it's nonsense or not. So let me tell you something. I am alive. But as of today, Catherine Thorne is dead. The obedient, dutiful daughter who brought you so much profit. She died in that fire you set." Arthur was so angry he was speechless. "I'm warning you. You pull another stunt like this, and I'll publicly disown you. I'll cut you out of the family, and you won't see a single cent," he threatened. "As you wish," Catherine said flatly. Then she hung up the phone. During the call, I saw her body trembling, her hands clenched into tight fists, but her voice had remained icily calm. After hanging up, she bowed her head, hiding her expression. I watched as she silently removed the SIM card from her phone. Then, with 2 fingers, she effortlessly snapped the tiny chip in half. Snap! After that, she looked up and let out a long, slow breath. In that instant, it was as if a massive weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She radiated the aura of someone who had been reborn through defiance. But there was also a tragic loneliness about her, the bravery of someone standing against the entire world. I looked at her, and my heart ached. This woman had just killed her past self over the phone. So who was the person standing in front of me now? She had lost her family, her identity, everything from her past. She was completely alone. 8 after the fire and the fight, the valley fell into a dead silence. The atmosphere between Catherine and me was both awkward and fragile. She was no longer a hostage, and I was no longer a kidnapper. We were 2 fugitives cast out by the world. "Auntie." Mia woke up in my arms, rubbing her eyes and calling out to her softly. Catherine stiffened and turned her head. "Aunt Cat, you don't like your daddy, do you?" Mia asked, her big eyes full of innocence. Catherine froze, unsure how to answer a 5-year-old's question. But Mia continued on her own. "It's okay." She reached out her small arms, patting Catherine's shoulder with the gravity of a tiny adult. "You can have half of my daddy." I choked on my own spit, coughing violently and wishing the ground would swallow me whole. "Mia, don't say things like that." I scolded her. But Mia ignored me completely. She squirmed out of my arms, ran to Catherine, and threw her arms around her neck, planting a loud smack of a kiss on her cheek. "Aunt Cat, will you be my new mommy?" Boom! My brain short-circuited. What on earth was this child saying? That way, Daddy won't have to work so hard to make money. And you can have a new daddy, too. My daddy is really nice. I watched as Catherine's face turned a shade of crimson I had never seen before, spreading from her cheeks to the tips of her ears and down her neck. It was the first time I had ever seen this Ice Queen look so flustered and helpless. She was completely frozen, not knowing whether to push Mia away or hug her back. I was blushing furiously myself, not knowing what to do with my hands. I ended up just staring intently at the clouds. Mommies tell babies stories and give them kisses, and you do that too, Aunt Cat. Mia continued her relentless divine intervention, her little mouth going a mile a minute. The air was thick with an unidentifiable mix of awkwardness, intimacy, and a strange sort of warmth. Finally, Catherine moved. She didn't push Mia away. Instead, she raised a hand and gently patted Mia's back. The gesture was a bit stiff, but it was tender. She kept her head down, her long eyelashes hiding the emotion in her eyes, never daring to look at me. I watched the two of them, one large and one small, and felt a tender spot in my heart being poked. Kidnapping, ransom, manhunts, a forest fire. All the terrifying experiences seemed to fade in the light of Mia's innocent words. The final barrier between us, the one between a kidnapper and his hostage, had quietly dissolved. The kidnapping might be over, but between her and me, it felt like something new was just beginning. I looked at her blushing profile, and my heart began to beat uncontrollably. What was I going to do? We couldn't stay in the valley forever. Catherine's composure quickly returned, though a faint blush still lingered on her cheeks. We need to get down the mountain, find a place to stay, and most importantly, get in touch with the outside world, she said. Where? Those guys might still be near the town. I worried. My father's men are results-oriented. They couldn't find me and started a fire. They've likely gone back to report their failure. We're safe for now, she analyzed. But the real trouble is still to come. Before I could ask what she meant by real trouble, disaster struck without warning. Just as we were about to walk out of the valley, Mia, who had seemed fine, suddenly went limp and collapsed. Mia! I screamed, catching her before she hit the ground. Her face was instantly as white as a sheet, her lips turned blue, and her body began to convulsively jerk. Her eyes rolled back in her head. Mia, wake up. Don't scare Daddy. I completely fell apart. I held my daughter's cold, twitching body, feeling my entire world crumble. My mind went blank, filled with nothing but pure, unadulterated terror. Now, Catherine snatched my phone. Her hands were shaking too, but her voice was laced with a forced calm. She quickly dialed 911. Yes, 911. This is... She rapidly gave our approximate location. I need emergency medical assistance. The patient is a 5-year-old girl with a history of severe congenital heart disease. She's unconscious and convulsing. Her speech was fast and clear, unbelievably composed. After hanging up with 911, she didn't stop. She immediately dialed another number. Hello, is this Professor Miller? This is Catherine Thorne. I have a patient here in critical condition. I need you to prep for surgery immediately. Yes, your best team, the best equipment. I'm sending you her medical records now. I need a helicopter evacuation. Right now. Immediately. In that moment, she wasn't a hostage or my partner in survival. She was our savior. Just then, several figures appeared at the mouth of the valley. It was a different group of men. They wore matching black suits, were powerfully built, and moved with a quiet confidence. Their eyes were cold. They were on a completely different level from the thugs from before. They silently surrounded us. The man in the lead looked at us, his gaze finally settling on Catherine. Miss Thorne, the chairman sent us to escort you home. His voice was devoid of any emotion. I held my dying daughter, looking at these men in utter despair. These were the real professionals Arthur Thorne had sent. We were trapped, but Catherine didn't even spare them a glance. All her attention was on Mia in my arms. She stepped in front of me, like a lioness protecting her cub, and issued a bone-chilling command to the lead man. Get out of my way. You delay my daughter's treatment, and I'll make sure your entire firm pays for it. Her words, my daughter, hit like a thunderclap, echoing in my ears, in the valley, and in the hearts of everyone present. The lead man froze. I froze. I held my daughter, looked at the woman standing guard in front of me, and the tears I had been holding back finally broke free, streaming down my face. Then the roar of a helicopter, growing louder as it approached, broke the standoff in the valley. In the end, the men in black suits didn't dare to make a move. They silently cleared a path. Catherine took the unconscious Mia from my arms and boarded the helicopter without a moment's hesitation. I followed close behind, a helpless shadow. The helicopter's rotors kicked up a powerful downdraft, making it hard to see. Through the swirling dust, I watched Catherine hold Mia tightly, calmly giving instructions to the onboard paramedics over the noise. My heart was a chaotic mix of burning anxiety and icy awe. We were flown directly to the best private hospital in the city. The moment we landed, a specialized medical team was waiting. Mia was rushed into the emergency room. Catherine had username as a guarantee, opening up every priority channel for Mia. All red tape was cut. Saving her life was the only thing that mattered. I was left outside the operating room. The closed doors felt like the line between life and death. I collapsed onto a bench in the hallway, unable to sit still, Mia's pale face flashing in my mind over and over. Catherine didn't sit. She stood right by the operating room doors, making one call after another on her phone. Unfreeze my personal asset accounts immediately. Contact the board. I'm calling an emergency online meeting. Send all the evidence of Arthur Thorne using corporate resources to commit arson and assault to my legal team. Her voice was quiet, but every sentence carried the force of a thunderbolt. She was mobilizing all of her resources, weaving a massive net, not only to save Mia, but to launch her counterattack. Catherine, a furious roar shattered the hallway's quiet. Arthur Thorne arrived, flanked by his lawyers and bodyguards, looking thunderous. When he saw me, he looked at me like I was something disgusting he'd found on his shoe. He pointed at me and yelled at Catherine. "You're siding with this kidnapper, this lowlife, against me?" Catherine slowly turned to face him. Her gaze was colder than the operating room lights. First, his name is Leo Garcia. Second, he is Mia's father. And third, as of today, my life is none of your business. Her words were firm, each one hitting Arthur Thorne like a physical blow. You ungrateful child, he trembled with rage. I'm telling you, as long as I'm alive, you will never. Don't bother, Catherine cut him off. She announced calmly, in front of everyone. I, Catherine Thorne, voluntarily renounce all shares and inheritance rights to Thorne Global. Simultaneously, I will be using my personal funds to establish a charitable foundation for children with heart disease, named in honor of Mia Garcia. Arthur Thorne and his lawyers were stunned into silence. She looked at me, but her gaze seemed to pass through me, as if she were making a proclamation to the world. I will pay for Mia's surgery and all subsequent medical expenses. It's not out of pity, and it's not a transaction. It's because Mia calls me Aunt Cat. It's because I want to save her. Arthur Thorne's lips turned purple with rage, but he was powerless against this daughter who was now completely beyond his control. Just then, the light above the operating room door went out with a soft click. My heart leaped into my throat. The surgeon came out, removing his mask. His face was tired, but smiling. The surgery was a success. The child is out of danger. My legs gave out from under me. I crumpled to the floor, kneeling. All the pent-up emotion I had suppressed for so long erupted in a flood of tears. I buried my face in my hands and wept like a child. After 2 days in the ICU, Mia was moved to a regular room. When she woke up, the first people she saw were me and Catherine. She gave a weak smile and reached out her little hands, taking one of mine and one of Catherine's. "Daddy, Aunt Cat, I dreamed we were all on a big airplane together." Her voice was faint but full of innocent joy. I cried and smiled at the same time. Catherine's eyes were red, too. Catherine handled the aftermath flawlessly. When the police came to the hospital to ask some routine questions, my palms began to sweat, unsure of what to say. Catherine had already prepared for everything. She explained the kidnapping away as a piece of performance art. Mr. Garcia is a very promising rural artist. I voluntarily accompanied him to the countryside to experience life there, seeking inspiration for my new philanthropic project. She even produced a printed letter of intent, complete with a signature that mimicked my handwriting. I stared at her, dumbfounded, as she turned a felony kidnapping into a corporate fact-finding mission. The police were skeptical, but given Catherine's status and the intervention of her lawyers, they eventually closed the case as a misunderstanding. The story created a firestorm online. The news of Catherine Thorne breaking with her father, renouncing her inheritance, and starting a charity became the biggest story of the year. She expertly redirected all media attention to her newly formed Mia's Hope Foundation. In one fell swoop, all the negative press about her was replaced by a narrative of her as an independent, compassionate, and socially responsible female icon. As for Arthur Thorne, she chose to keep his scandals, the arson, the cold-bloodedness, private, a final, silent act of a daughter. The day Mia was discharged from the hospital, the sun was shining brightly. I found Catherine on the phone, handling foundation business. I handed her a debit card. It contained my entire life savings, less than $5,000. I know this isn't enough. Not even close, I said, mustering all my courage. But I will pay you back. I'll work for the rest of my life. I'll do whatever it takes, but I'll pay you back. She ended her call and looked at the card in my hand. She smiled. It was the first time I had ever seen her smile so freely. Leo, she asked, do you really think we could put a price on what's between us? I was speechless. She was right. How could we? She saved Mia's life. She saved my life. She gave us a new beginning. What could I possibly do to repay that? The foundation is just starting up. We need a dedicated and hard-working project manager to travel to remote rural areas across the country and find more children like Mia who need our help. She looked at me, her expression serious. You know what it's like in those communities. You understand the desperation and helplessness of those families. Are you interested? She wasn't offering me a handout or charity. She was offering me a job, a dignified way to stand by her side, a chance to pay back her kindness with my own hard work. I looked at her and nodded firmly. I am. I couldn't think of anything else to say. Being able to stay near her, to see her, to do something for her, that was the greatest luxury I could imagine. A few months later, everything had settled into a new normal. I became the project manager for Mia's Hope Foundation. I was always on the road, and though the work was hard, my heart felt fuller and more at peace than ever before. Mia's health was excellent. Her cheeks were rosy, and she had become a happy, energetic little girl attending the best preschool in the city. Catherine poured most of her energy into the foundation. She was no longer the Ice Queen CEO. She had traded her high heels and power suits for casual clothes and flats, and she smiled much more often. One bright, sunny afternoon, I had just returned from a business trip. I went to an organic farm that partnered with the foundation to handle some paperwork. As I walked onto the property, I saw two familiar figures. Mia was wearing a pretty sundress, running through a field of sunflowers, her laughter like silver bells. You would never guess she had once been a child tormented by illness. Catherine stood at the edge of the field in a simple white dress, watching Mia with a gentle smile. The golden light of the setting sun enveloped her, making her glow. I found myself just staring, mesmerized. You're back, she said, noticing me. She smiled. Yeah, just landed. Came straight here, I said, walking over to stand beside her. We talked about the foundation's latest projects, the atmosphere easy and comfortable. The terrifying kidnapping had become our unspoken secret, the bizarre starting point of our new lives. As the sun began to set, Catherine prepared to leave. Mia ran out of the sunflower field, tugging on her dress, her little face tilted up and full of reluctance. Aunt Cat, aren't you going to come home and have dinner with us tonight? Catherine paused, instinctively glancing at me. My heart gave a sudden lurch. I scratched the back of my neck, my palms sweating. I summoned every ounce of courage I possessed. Yeah, I said, my voice a little tight. Stay for dinner. Mia and I, we like you too. Catherine's smile was as warm and brilliant as the sunset over the field of flowers. She bent down, scooped Mia into her arms, and kissed her on the cheek. Okay. Then, she looked up at me, her eyes filled with an unmistakable warmth and affection. I knew, from that moment on, we would have many, many more evenings where we would all have dinner together.